Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Thanks for joining me today. We're coming to you from Sweetwater Studio B. We have a special guest, Mark Parfitt's here.
Hey.
It's great to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
So you're from just down the road originally?
A little bit, yeah. I've been kind of all over the place, really, and just kind of posted up in Los Angeles these days. But
yeah, you're from Columbus, though, right? Originally?
Yeah, I was born in Columbus, and but it's hard because I moved around so much. I don't know where my home is. Really, it always switched, but that was where I was born.
Right,
yeah.
right. Well, since then, obviously, tons of success. I mean, everybody from, oh man, Stanley Clarke to Justin Bieber to Mary J. Blige to Snoop Dogg to Pooh Bear to, I mean, the list is really, really incredible.
Thanks,
Congratulations
man.
on all your success.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a long time coming, and all of those things really came in the past probably 5-6 years,
Wow.
even though I've been doing this professionally for about 10 years now.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, all the persistence kind of got me into those doors where I can be in front of a Mary J. Blige and a Justin Bieber, and it's just been amazing, man.
That is incredible. Yeah, that's so cool. So you started out though originally as a guitar player,
Yeah.
right? How did you get into the recording side of things?
Naturally with bands, we go to the studio, record or anything like that. So whenever my friends got like a little setup at the house, I was just more interested in recording all the parts afterwards and messing with EQs and delays and everything. And I kind of realized like, oh man, I love this side more than I'm playing. Like I find way more enjoyment sitting behind while everyone's gone and I'm over here tinkering and putting effects on things. So getting into the band, it kind of introduced me to the studio, and then once I saw the studio, it was like, okay, I don't really want to be in the band. This makes a lot more sense for me. So then
Right.
I just made that transition and went to college and got a degree in recording arts
Okay.
from a school called IDT in Tampa. And that just kind of started the whole journey, really.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the question everyone will always ask is, so you went to school, got the degree, you've got the academic chops, and you've got some experience doing it. How did you make the leap from there to actually doing it in the real world?
The leap started really from one of my instructors at the school. The main instructor liked me, and he was tapped in with a bunch of these studio owners around town. And then when an assistant job came up, I was already assisting and interning at studios, but there's one particular place that was like the best place in St. Pete. That was where I came up initially, and I got the assistant job in there and just started out kind of working my way up, but just making runs and patching stuff, setting up mics. And after, probably a year and a half, 2 years of that, eventually moved my way up to be the main tracking guy there. Did that for a couple years, and then those contacts in that studio for a couple years. When I moved over to Los Angeles, all those contacts helped me out when I made the move because I had people to reference and call when I was over here. So that set me up to really win. Like those first years of school got me into the door into a studio. That's where I really cut my chops and really learned and hands-on with mic placement and everything and dealing with clients. And then those 3 years really set me up. So when I went to Los Angeles, it was like, I have the education, I have plenty of real-world experience in a multi-room SSL facility, and now I can just translate and find the important people I need to work with.
Right.
Because in Florida you don't have all those acts coming through all the time. It was like, I've recorded Stanley Clarke in Florida, but I mean, there's like 2 of those people a year.
Right.
You don't really get like a Justin Bieber calling the studio every day. So
Right.
making that move, I had all of the tools in place, and it was just about finding the avenue and just hustling, really.
Yeah, very cool. So in those early years, you were doing a lot of voiceover recording, were you not? Were you spending some time doing that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I had one client that did so many things from like Cartoon Network to Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, National Geographic, like the range is all over the place. So I did a lot of that stuff early on, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, I worked out of like a bunch of audiobook studios where I was capturing actors just voicing books essentially. So you're just following along, and they're performing it like a piece, and
Right.
you're just there quality control and making sure they hit their timing and inflection and everything correct. So I've done all kinds of voiceover stuff really over the years, but the voiceovers were always just like, that was a job and somebody that called, because I worked at like a private facility initially, and all the guys that had been there, they were all doing it for years, and they just only wanted to work on the label's private stuff. So any of the stuff that was the daily rental, like a voiceover, it was like Pokemon or Robot Chicken or whatever. I'm like, they're like, no, let's just have Mark do it. I'm like, what? Of course, I'll do that. That's amazing.
Right.
So I, kind of got a lot of that under my belt. But
Right.
these days, I'm just strictly into the music world.
Of course,
now,
of course. It lays that foundation. Then you moved into the more the music side of it. And one of the things you've been doing that I find really interesting is you're tour engineer for Justin Bieber. What does that mean?
That was such a random one where he has a studio bus on his tour. Well, recently when he had the tour going, we had a whole full-on bus outfitted with a recording studio in the back, and my whole job on that was just to be there in case he wants to record an idea. If he gets a spark of inspiration, if they need to punch something last minute, anything while he's on the road, so he's not inconvenienced to have to deal with a new engineer or finding a studio or dealing with any of that. So my whole job was just to be the recording studio engineer on the road. And that's strictly what I was doing. They have all their guys doing front of house and monitors and playback, and I'm just kind of there watching the show and enjoying. And then on the off time is when I'm like, all right, I'm on standby. We'll see if they give me a call and, we need to do anything right now. So it's just really just recording studio on the road. Oddly enough, you don't really see that too often. Right. But
did you have a pretty well-equipped studio? Is it fairly well?
Yeah, it was pretty nice. They had the bus already outfitted where they're speakers and a little monitor controller, and they're outfitted and built into the walls and everything. And when we set it up, it was just all about bringing in a quick outboard chain, just solid I/O, vocal chain options, and another outboard option maybe for like bass, guitar, or something like that. And just keeping it very simple, because we just need a quick pop vocal and an overdub. And especially when you're in a space that's probably as big as this carpet here, there's not a lot you can really fit in and get going on.
Only going to fit so much gear in there and still get the musicians in, right?
Yeah, for sure, yeah. When I was starting to get a little bit more gear and companies were sending me stuff, I'm like, all right, this is getting crazy in here. I'm running out of space just for people to sit. So that's been one of the things I've been doing since the first half of this year. And now I'm kind of off the tour and figuring out what the next phase is,
Right. So do you think of yourself more as a tracking engineer, as a mix engineer, or how do you look at yourself in the industry?
I'm probably more of a tracking engineer, because that's really where my day-to-day income comes from, and where the biggest artists that I deal with are all because of recording, typically. But I mix a lot too, and I'm trying to bridge that gap more and more as the years go on to really get my mixing chops right, and so I can go from 75-25 to more 25-75, or eventually just mix all the time, ideally.
Sure, right.
But yeah, I would say I'm just mostly a tracking engineer, but I do mix, and I'm just trying to find that balance of trying to be great, and I can mix at a point where I just mix independent projects on the day-to-day, but I want to get to the point where I'm mixing A-list, Billboard charting kind of projects, so I know I have to go down this tracking hole further to, get those connections and build that reliability and just, so people can see me in a different light and not just little mixer Mark or whatever, So, but yeah.
It's a process, right? You build your careers like any other career that you're working through.
It's all in phases. Every 3 to 5 years, I feel like there's a switch. After all this persistence, it's oh, cool, it broke, and now I'm into this next phase now. And so I'm just now hitting this new phase. We're working with the Justin crew and everything, and now just keep going the next 3-4 years, and I feel like I'll be in that spot of all right, I'm in the mixing the way I want and mixing the records that I want too.
So given that you're doing so much tracking, let me ask you a few kind of specifics.
Yeah.
What's your ideal vocal chain for capturing an artist if you were going to take one with you to a session?
The one lately has really just been Hazelrigg Industries. I've been using the VLC, and the VNE has been my kind of go-to vocal chain. And I have a little 4U box that I lug around everywhere. And so I know if I bring that, it's not even just a vocal chain too. I know I have my all-around chain where bass, guitar, whatever we got to do, I'm good to go. So yeah, Hazelrigg Industries has been my foundation lately.
Right. I didn't mean to turn that into a product placement kind of thing, because they're here with you today. But I was curious what you would actually take with you.
Not even just a product. I generally use this stuff. It's not even no BS. There's a lot of of course I use the 1073 CO1B combo for years, and that's been the thing. But once I found the Hazelrigg guys and got my hands on that, I was like, yeah, this is over. This it has so much more depth. The frequency range fills out much more to me. The EQ is sweeter on the ear. The compression can be gluier or more subtle. I feel like it's just a more versatile overall setup than just the standard 1073 CL1B, which
Right.
is something that's great and I use a lot, but the Hazelrigg stuff has really been the move.
Right. Are there particular microphones that you reach for first?
I love the Manley Ref C, just for like vocals. Yeah, Manley Ref C is one that's like more of like a budget kind of high-end mic that I love. C800's obviously always in there. 251's really cool too, but really it's like the C800 and probably the Manley Ref C that I think I made most of my money in the past like 8 years off of those two microphones alone, really.
So I'm curious, as a tracking engineer working on these high-level projects, how finished are the tracks that you deliver to the mix engineer, or if you're mixing yourself? I mean, do you feel like what you're sending them is ready to go on to the final project, or what do they expect to get from you?
It depends on which client I'm dealing with, because some people record so fast where you don't really have a time to like put any kind of rough mix or any kind of like real love into it, because it's just like, yo, we did 6 songs today, so you're just going like that. You don't really have time. But if it's somewhere like a client where if it's like one song we're dealing with throughout the whole day, I'll usually have it pretty mixed by the end of the session.
Okay.
Especially if they're writing it there, then I can see that they're going through melodies over this one loop. So I'm like, okay, I know these are all the moments I'm gonna draw some automation in already. So when they go to cut it, there's already a reverb and delay throws in those spots. And so it's one of those days when I have like a slower pace session is when I have like a track that gets more flushed out for like the mix engineer. But if it's just more of like, hey, we're just cutting 6 songs a day, it's like, I'm just getting it on paper, we're gonna get some like a vibe going and make it sound like leveled and nice, but I'm not getting too intricate because like you got somebody trying to play piano, then they're pulling up a bass, now they're hopping over to the vocal mic, and then this person wants to set up a DI here, so it's not a lot of like, you're facilitating a lot. So it all depends, but usually the sessions that I have more time, those are flushed out, and it'll usually be pretty easy for the mix engineer to just kind of dial in any of like my quick moments and feel it out more.
Right. Let you be a little bit more creative when you got the time to actually focus a little bit.
Yeah, 100%.
Work with the artist on it. So you have a unique perspective given that you're transitioning into doing mix engineer work as well. I'm curious what you like to see as a mix engineer, given your tracking background, come into you when you're getting ready to mix a project.
Man, I honestly just want to have printed down files. So if you put your mix, blend and everything, I'd want just leave that and let me take it from there, typically. As long as it's recorded well and everything, but if it's by somebody that doesn't understand or really have their fundamentals down as well, then I'd just love just to have full-on Pro Tools session for me to get nitty and gritty and find in all the playlists and maybe recomp or re-edit things and have that flexibility. So it kind of is dependent on whoever's sending the files. There's some people where I know their work is so quality where like I don't want to mess with what you're doing. I just want to elevate it. Where there's other clients that they don't have that same fundamentals and the same like they don't know how to produce it or because even producers have to engineer themselves at this point. It's kind of the roles have changed so much. So if I get these producers that understand it, then print it. Let me just finesse it after that. But otherwise, like give me the raw files and I'll kind of work this from the ground up.
Right. What do you see as common mistakes that people make when they're tracking?
Either recording too hot or recording too low is another thing. So when you start to put loads of compression down the line, then all that noise floor gets brought up. So that and a lot of bad editing too is another thing that I see, and especially when people print that in, it's just like, oh no, now we have to kind of see how we can fix this with some isotope and whatever, So it's really just proper gain staging is one thing, and then just the poor editing really. So if you can get those two things down as a tracking engineer, like you're going to be working.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, speaking of tracking and mixing, you're here at Sweetwater. You came in with the Hazelrigg guys.
Yeah.
And you've been tracking in Studio A with the intent of mixing in Atmos here in Studio B.
Yeah.
Tell us about the project and what you're doing.
Yeah, so in Studio A, we've been tracking with Atmos in mind, and instead of just doing anything typically with just 1 or 2 microphones, we're putting 8 on everything, whether it's a bass, the organ, piano, everything's getting just mic'd 10 times more than we normally would. So now hopefully when we come in here tomorrow, we have all the flexibility to say, okay, we can spread it all around or we can kill some of these and not use it and just recording with Atmos in mind. So it's a new thing for me too, because this is a new format and or newer.
Yeah.
And recording with it in mind is something I've never done. So I'm interested to see tomorrow.
Pretty rare. I don't know of many places that are doing that outside of what we're doing here at Sweetwater.
No, you guys have a really phenomenal setup, and the fact that you can even just tie it in directly is kind of so mind blowing.
Yeah.
Just recording directly over there and monitoring in Atmos here is just like next level. So
is that how you're doing it? Are you monitoring in here while they're tracking in there?
We wanted to do that today, but they didn't have it set up. So what we're doing is just tracking in there, and then we're going to take it in here tomorrow and just run it through.
Right. And who's the project for?
A guy named Dana Vons. He's an independent artist, and he's just a phenomenal like dancer, singer, performer. He's awesome. So we just have a super vibey little track that we did for him, and we're just having the Hazelrigg brothers come in, and because they're phenomenal players, so they just have them kind of replacing parts and having Atmos in mind. So we're playing all the same things, but we're capturing it in a new way so we can mix it with Atmos in mind and just have more flexibility.
Have you done any Atmos mixing prior to this?
No. Wow. That's what we're going to figure out tomorrow. Just trial by fire, you know?
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Given that you're monitoring in Studio A, which does not have an Atmos speaker array, I'm curious your mindset of what you're listening to with the 8 microphones and things. Are you trying to listen to everything, or how are you
we're listening to everything briefly, but we're still like we're checking the room mics, making sure it's cool, and then muting those right now. Because in stereo, it gets
too roomy.
It's too roomy, and it doesn't translate whatsoever. But like when we go over here, then we'll have that option to see like, okay, cool, let me plug some of these around and see what actually is like feasible.
Right. Do you have a vision in mind of where you think it'll end up? You know, the voice is going to be here. I'm not going to use probably the ambience on the bass. Or how forward-looking are you approaching the project?
Honestly, we're not looking that forward. We're taking it step by step, to be real with you. We're going to figure that all out tomorrow and see, because it's still so new to me. I'm really going to trust the Hazelrigg guys, because they're the ones that were like, okay, this is going to change your world, Mark. Like, you're not going to see music ever like the same way after this. So we're just gonna mess around tomorrow and see. I was listening to a lot of mixes earlier and kind of gauging, because a lot of people, the approach is so different, where it's the wild, wild west. You listen to every mix and they're all so different. It reminds me of the old records where you hear vocal off to the side, drums all the way over here, bass over here, and I'm getting those same things where I'm like, oh, okay, cool, this feels new again, because it just stirs up your emotions instead of just hearing the same, like everybody, stereo mixes, like everyone still kind of pans everything generally the same, levels them the same, you know, so you can listen to so many mixes and still be like, okay, they all sound kind of similar, even though great, good, whatever, but this is like vastly different from mix to mix. It's pretty shocking. So
yeah, there is no kind of standard of kick drum in the front, in the center, and bass in the center, and snare in the center.
Yeah, I was hearing a song with vocals in just the rears. I'm like, whoa, this is like weird, but cool, you know.
Being surrounded by these versus mixing in 5.1 is a little different, because you don't get quite the solid center point the way you do with the 7 speakers around you, and then having the height speakers to reinforce that all as well. It opens it up, I think, even more to being able to place things all around the room.
Totally.
You're still focused front, but you don't necessarily have to be. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, it just gives you so much more space and headroom and room to play. So it just makes me feel excited for music again. So I'm excited to be over here and get more hands-on.
Man, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear what you come up with. I'm going to stop by tomorrow and hope I can hear some mix in progress. I think it's going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Thanks for visiting us. I hope you'll come back again and hang out, do some more Atmos recording.
Oh yeah, no, we're definitely going to be back, no doubt.
Right on. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Well, appreciate it, man.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
All right, and our thanks to the Hazelrigg company as well. They brought you in here, like you said, and they're helping with the session and everything, and of course, great gear as well. So
yeah, amazing.
Kudos
guys.
to them.
Yeah.
Right on. And thank you for joining me here at Sweetwater Studio B. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.